Hello, everyone. You are listening to Separation to Oneness, and I welcome you. I'm Nikki Hughes, and we will delve into the profound subjects of life, love, and spirituality. We are going to investigate and reveal how to live from that limitless reservoir of happiness, care, and resilience. And then once there, how we can allow ourselves to move into the space of bliss, the connection to everything. And that's what I call oneness. And so to find out more about my work, please visit my website. I am at elementalbalance.ca. I really hope you enjoy this episode, and if you feel it's valuable, I ask that you would kindly share it with someone who's important to you. Hello, everyone. I am so excited to have my very special guest, Catherine Cheong, on with me today to talk about breathwork and the healing power of your breath. And I'm so excited because I have experienced a breathwork session with Catherine, and she has the most amazing, gentle presence and ability to connect and nurture as you move through the healing breathing process. Now, this was a group session, not even a one-on-one, which I imagine is an even more incredible experience. So I may just have to come and try one of those too. But she really does have the most lovely energy that just shines through in her work and in who she is. And when she agreed to come and speak to me about the power of breath as a healer, I was overjoyed. I really, really appreciate her being here. And I know that you are going to feel exactly the same way that I do about her, that she is a very special person. So welcome, Catherine. And then I'm just going to move into your formal bio so that everyone can understand more about who you are. So Catherine, you've been in the wellness world for over a decade. She was first introduced to wellness by her mom through yoga. She then took her love for yoga to the next level in 2018 and received her yoga teacher's training in Traditional Hindu Hatha Yoga. With teaching and practicing pranayamas, she began to get curious about the power of breathing. The Wim Hoff Method took her interest, and she began practicing it daily. Feeling the positive effects of breathwork, in 2021, she received her Breathwork Facilitator training with Ashley Ludman in beautiful Costa Rica. Oh, I can't wait to talk about that. Now she's based on Vancouver Island, where she spends her time facilitating breathwork and as an organic flower farmer. That's got to be wonderful. So Catherine, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so you have been doing breathwork for a few years now, and I know that the session that I joined close to where we both live, which is really handy, was themed around reconnecting to self, which of course is caught my eye because of my passion of self-love and the work that I do, because we both know that this is where the goodness and the connection to oneness comes from, right? So this journey of yours into breath work and the reconnection to self, how did that happen for you? And how did you arrive here in this incredible place doing this beautiful work?
Yeah, those are all really great questions. So yeah, when the pandemic first hit in 2020, I kind of took initiative, as I think a lot of healers did, and we're like, okay, how can we be of service? How can we help people right now? And so I put together a little month-long offering called Karma Kick in January 2021. And I connected with a bunch of healers kind of all around the world, mostly in the US, some in Costa Rica also. And pretty much every weekend we had a alternative healing modality offering. So I kind of wanted to make people aware that if talk therapy wasn't really working for you, there's other stuff that's out there. And so we had a life coach, we had theta healing, we had a cacao ceremony, we had a women's circle and men's circle, and we had breath work. And so that was the first time that I ever really did like a full hour-long breathwork session. And it was with my dear friend Aaliyah. And she's how I got connected to Ashley, my teacher. And so I did the breathwork session and I was just blown away. And I was like, where did I just travel to? So for me, it was honestly on par with psychedelics. And I was just like, the fact that you can reach this state just through the power of your breath is phenomenal. And I was just like a puddle. I was crying, I was having visions, and I was just receiving a bunch of downloads. And I was just like, okay, there's something here that's really, really special. And so I connected with Leah more and asked her about her training, asked her about her experience facilitating. And I was like, okay, I think I have to do this, you know? And so with experiencing more breath work, I really just felt the power of the ability to have an emotional release and to create that space to connect with yourself and just to slow down, because we live in such a fast-paced society nowadays.
We do.
And so it just really gives you that permission piece to focus on breathing and to calm and just to relax. Because, you know, for instance, with meditation, it's almost like a more advanced practice, I would say, because if you're feeling anxious and someone's like, hey, just sit down and close your eyes and try to calm your mind, and, you know, following a meditation, but realistically, your mind's going to be going and thinking about all the things that you don't want to think about.
Yes.
Whereas with breath work, you're really focused on breathing. And so whether it's focusing on that inhale and exhale, you have something to focus on. Does that make sense?
It does. And that is a meditation in itself, right? You're putting yourself into a meditative state through the focus, the you know, deep focus of the in and the out, right? You're pulling away everything else, which is great.
Yeah.
And so, but you were already a yoga teacher at that point before you did the breath work. And I know yoga incorporates a lot of breath work into it as well. It's an important aspect of it. So this was really about you taking it to a whole new level. Is that right?
Totally.
And do you still teach? Do you still teach yoga, or is it mostly breath work now?
I've mostly shifted into breath work. But like, you know, if people are like, hey, do you do yoga classes? I'm like always so happy to do it. Sometimes when I go back to Toronto and visit my mom, I'll offer group kind of yoga classes for them in the garden and stuff. So
that's nice from where it all began, right? With your mom.
Totally.
That's so cool.
Totally.
Yeah.
Super grateful.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a question just about how breath work works. So a couple of questions about that. So I know breath work, if for somebody who was really new to hearing it as a term for healing, they might not really understand how it works. Because we all breathe. It's just all, you know, breath is life. And from the moment we come in, we take a breath and off we go. And it seems like it's so simple. And yet we're not really consciously aware that we're doing different breathing in reaction and different patterns of breath in reaction to situations and our own environments. So can you talk a little bit about, you know, how does it work? How does breath work as a healing tool work, and why is it so effective?
So yeah, that's a great question. So the way that breath work works is that you are stepping out of your fight or flight mode and tuning into your rest and digest. And so with that, it's kind of, in a more scientific term, you would hear the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest, and then your sympathetic, which is the fight or flight. And so with breath work, kind of like sometimes I do parasympathetic breathes, and then sometimes I do sympathetic breathes. So parasympathetic is much more calming for the nervous system, and just overall breath work is so good and nourishing for your nervous system. And so that's kind of the real healing tool, I would say, behind it, is that your nervous system needs to recalibrate and to kind of equal out. And so with doing breath work, it really, really helps with that. And a lot of people nowadays are struggling with depression or anxiety. And so it's such a great tool to help with that, I find. A lot of people I work with who do struggle with anxiety, you'll kind of see within the first half of the class, they usually start to cry, because it's such a safe space and container for you to allow these emotions. And again, like we said earlier, just to slow down and really tune in and come back to the self with what's really going on. And if you kind of look at it in a traditional Chinese medicine way, the lungs hold grief. They're one of the spaces in the body that hold grief. And so in 2020, I lost two of my best friends. And so using breath work as a tool to help move through this grief was so powerful for me. And and so it's just like, as I was saying earlier, with living in a fast-paced society, people don't actually give themselves the time to grieve, whether that's a romantic relationship or a friendship or actually losing a loved one. We just kind of like, how can we distract ourselves, and we don't often give ourselves the space to grieve because that's just how we've been conditioned and programmed. Nowadays, I feel like it might be shifting, but in the past, I feel like it's very much been like that.
Yeah. And it's also uncomfortable. People
For sure.
typically have learned how to cut themselves off from what's uncomfortable. Nobody wants to sit in it, and you never know how long it's going to last, right? With grief. So it can be a real challenge.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
great to know that breath work can help you move through that and just release some of that out of the body.
It's such a great tool to help move any kind of stuck emotions, I find. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. And so how does that work? Like moving a stuck emotion. So you're doing your breath work when we're going to talk a little bit more about patterns and
Mhm.
how all the different types that you can do.
Mhm.
How does that open up for emotions to be present?
Yeah. So, again, kind of like tuning into the nervous system. And I definitely am a believer that our bodies keep score, like the book
Yes,
title.
they do.
And they will trap emotions or experiences, trauma in the body. And so kind of the auditory cues I'll give in class is like really tune into the body and where you're feeling any trapped emotions and try to bring that breath, so your energy, to that space. And whether that's through physically breathing or through like physical tapping or just brushing or just like self massage, just to really give yourself permission to tune into that. And rather than breathing into a space of like self-judgment, it's more so into a space of curiosity. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so, and in addition to that, there's almost a mindfulness component too, is to be doing this from a place of compassion for yourself so that you're not judging yourself as it comes up and creating even more negative emotion for yourself. So that I think that whole compassionate place and the fact that you're creating a safe space, which I have to say, you truly do create that,
Thank you.
is a real gift for people to be able to be in that space, feel nurtured, and just allow that stuff to come up sort of organically in the way that it needs to from the body. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so important. And just like kind of like you experienced on Thursday, it's that permission piece, right? It's really giving people that permission. And also, I can't take all the credit. It's everyone together in that space who has that openness and that willingness to co-create that safe space together.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
what about people who are afraid of their emotions? What about the people who've been stuffing it down for so long that they might be afraid to pop the cork, Like,
Oh, for
so
sure, for
would
sure.
you recommend going to a group session or doing a one-on-one session and people can have ab reactions to things where they're having something really big happening, and how would you coach somebody who might be afraid of that? They may not want to try breath work, right? So you don't want that to happen. So how would you coach them through that?
Totally. Yeah, that's a great question. I
Mm-hmm.
think it totally varies per individual.
Okay.
And I think it also depends on if people, say for example, someone might feel safer going to a group class with
Right.
a really good friend who's like, hey, this has really helped me and I feel like it could potentially help you. Um, but on the other hand, someone might be like, this is super scary for me to look at. I don't want anyone to see me be this vulnerable. So they might book a private one-to-one.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's so interesting because a lot of people who have never done breath work before and then they do a breathwork session, I feel like I see like the same kind of face come out of the session back into the space, and they're just like, what just happened? Like,
Yeah.
where did I just go? And they never expect all of the emotions that come up because,
Mhm.
yeah, like I said earlier, it's like when you give yourself permission to slow down and to really look inward and to connect with yourself, it's like,
Mhm.
oh, there's a lot in there. But also everyone has so much trauma or anything to really heal in their life. It's like you're never alone in the journey. And
Mhm.
I think that's a really important thing to remind people too, is like
Right.
you're never alone in your process. You might feel like I'm the only one who's going through this, but once you speak up about it. And that's why I really encourage the sharing circles at the end of the group breathes, because people can be like, oh wow, like I totally felt that too, you know. So it's affirming and comforting too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's a lovely, lovely practice. Do you think of, do you see the breath as its own intelligence in the body or as a dimension of intelligence of the body itself?
Hmm. I would probably say a dimension of intelligence of the
Okay.
body. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's been used for thousands of years, hasn't it?
Yeah,
Breath work.
it's such an ancient practice, and kind of like I said in the, or like you said in the intro, the pranayama practice with yoga that I was teaching, we would do half an hour of breath work and then an hour of yoga after. And it's, yeah, just super, super powerful stuff.
Yeah. And I know I did Kundalini yoga for a while, pardon me, which was lovely. But
Mhm.
I found that it was a very energizing breath. So if I would do Kundalini yoga at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I wasn't sleeping until 1 o'clock in the morning. This is like, I
Totally.
can't, I don't, how am I going to do this? I just found it very energizing. Yet the one I did with you was so soothing and relaxing. I slept like a rock. So
Good.
there's
Good.
differences then into what you're doing with your breath. Could you explain that a little bit?
For sure.
Mm,
So, kind
yeah.
of like I was saying earlier, tuning into
Mhm.
like the parasympathetic nervous system and the
Right.
sympathetic. So, Kundalini is very sympathetic nervous system. It's very like
Okay.
quick, quick, quick breathing, right?
Yes.
And
Okay.
whereas the parasympathetic is very slow. So, like very intentionally breathing in and exhaling out, you know? So, it's
Mhm.
much more of a relaxed, calming energy, where that Kundalini is very stimulating, right? And so
Okay.
that's why you weren't able to sleep, because
Well,
so much
that
energy was
explains it.
coming up. And
Yeah.
then, you know, that's also another important piece for me with my offerings, is like
Mhm.
really giving people, again, that permission piece to just breathe at whatever pace feels good for you. Because I feel like,
Mhm.
especially on Instagram and social media, you see these like super intense emotional releases and all these breathwork videos, you know, where people are screaming, people are
Yeah.
crying and rolling
Yeah.
on the floor, you know.
Mhm.
And I think that scares a lot of people
I'm
away,
sure it
which is
does.
completely fair,
Yeah.
because, you know, breathwork doesn't always look like that.
Yeah.
And it has so many different faces. And I think that's really important for people to understand. It doesn't always have to be this huge, you
Mhm.
know, emotional release where you're crying and screaming and, you know, convulsing and shaking. It's
Yeah.
beautiful when that does happen. And, you know, when it does happen, it needs to happen. That person needs to have that release.
Mhm.
It can also, like you said, be like super calming and relaxing, where you are really nourishing that parasympathetic nervous system that allows you to have that super epic sleep.
Right. It was really
Yeah.
good.
Mhm,
And I would
mhm.
imagine that you get what you need in the session. Like your body is intelligent enough to know that it's not going to unlock something that's going to create a huge amount of difficulty for you in that moment or for the next week or two, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Unless there's a part of you that feels you're really ready for it,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. And
And
I
so
tell
it's
people that
trusting.
totally, yeah, it's a,
Mhm.
the trust piece is huge. And I tell people that all the time, where I'm like, sometimes you might just fall asleep in the breathwork session, and that's totally okay. Like your body just needs to rest. And sometimes you might actually cry and have a big emotional release, and that's perfect too.
Yeah. And so it's important to recognize that the suppressed emotions that need to come up and come out are the things that are standing in your way to connecting to who you really are, right? That
Yeah.
beautiful divine spark. We have all these
Mhm.
blocks and limitations and things that get put into place based on all the things that you talked about, Catherine, the traumas, the wounding, the difficult situations, the challenges, and we create all of these things and they are held in our bodies, right?
Mhm.
And the
Yeah.
emotions are held in our bodies. And so this is a beautiful way to just allow that to open up, come out, and then you're closer to who you really are, right?
Yeah, really,
It's
really
great.
like igniting that fire and getting in touch with like your true authentic self.
Yes. Yeah, it's a
Hmm.
beautiful, beautiful thing. So
Yes.
how does this work for physical healing? So this is great for emotional, bringing it up, letting it go, because we have to let go of the emotions. What about physical healing? Is it good for that? I'm asking because I have a friend who just had an accident and has a few broken bones, and I'm thinking, maybe some breath work might be good for that friend to get some healing going.
Totally. I mean, definitely it, like, depends on which physical ailments the individual has.
Right.
Because if it hurts to breathe, obviously you don't want to push that too much.
Yeah.
But I think in the sense of, like, I'm a firm believer of the physical, energetic, and emotional bodies are all, intertwined together. So if you do have physical ailments, it's usually connected to emotional or
Right.
experiential
Yes.
circumstances. And so an accident is probably kind of like a bigger picture where, I usually am like in my intake forms, I always have, the questions, do you have physical ailments? Because sometimes I do energetic work with the individuals. So it's like good to know if they have any past injuries.
Right.
But yeah, in the sense of breathwork healing physical ailments, I think it's all interconnected. So yeah, I think it is possible for sure. It just depends on the individual with what they're experiencing and kind of what they want to improve on. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah. And I would imagine too, just the very act of bringing in more oxygen is going to trigger healing things in your body, right? Because
Mhm.
more oxygen is not a bad thing.
For sure.
You're
For
creating
sure.
clarity in your mind and energy and yeah,
Definitely.
all of
Yeah.
those good things.
Yeah. And I think also, again, just like circling back to kind of that focus point that I was mentioning earlier, in the
Mhm.
sense of kind of giving that individual that time and space to just be calm and maybe not to focus too much on the pain and to just
Right.
focus on their breath and yeah, just tuning into that.
Right. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's good. And, if you have an injury, like you said, that makes it hard to breathe, then maybe it's not the time to do really difficult breath work, right? So
Yeah, yeah, for
take it
sure.
easy until you can. Now, there's
Mhm,
different types of breath work too. So I know you do the conscious connected breath,
mhm,
and that's what you're trained in, right?
mhm.
But you also you started with Wim Hof, and I know Wim Hof is a big type of breath work. It's a whole program with cold water dipping and everything too.
Yes, yeah.
So holotropic breath work is a big one too, right? So that's a big one.
Mhm, mhm.
So it can be confusing. So why are there so many different types of breath work? And of course, we just talked about Kundalini and the energizing that
Mhm.
I've been doing with the breath work there.
Mhm.
So how do you know which one to do? And so is there a difference between them? Because I would imagine for someone starting out and looking at, oh, what kind of breath work, it can be overwhelming,
Yeah,
right?
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think there's so many types because it's kind of almost like yoga and any wellness. It's like
Okay.
everyone will kind of gravitate to what works for them. And for example, the Wim Hof method with working with cold therapy
Hmm.
is super powerful. And some people might just be like, actually, no, I don't feel comfortable doing that, and that's okay. And they
Hmm.
might find that conscious connected circular breathing is best for them, or doing, Kundalini yoga, or simply just doing pranayama practices. I personally find the Wim Hof method so just like, not sure what word I'm trying to use here, but it's just very open, and I guess accessible would be the word that I'm
Right.
looking for,
Okay.
in the sense of having it for free on YouTube, so he has like
Yes.
an
Okay.
11-minute practice that I like to do in the morning time, because I'm like, 11 minutes, this is perfect. Instead of going on my phone and mindlessly scrolling on Instagram, I can just go back and do this practice right
Yeah.
away and feel great.
Okay.
And with the Wim Hof method, it's also incorporating breathing retentions. And
Hmm.
so some individuals really prefer doing breath work and having the retentions because they find that they can go deeper into a deeper kind of meditative space with
Right.
that time that they're doing the retention. And then with holotropic breathing, I personally haven't done
Hmm.
a session yet, because it's like, it's almost like the intense breath work that I'm like, I haven't tried it yet, because
It's
it's
intense.
it's really intense.
Hmm.
And just doing research about it and like seeing videos on the internet, I'm like, whoa, yeah, it's definitely powerful stuff, and some people just prefer that method, and that's great. So
Yeah, so it's a personal preference then. So it's basically just try these things and see what feels right. The
And I think,
conscious, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think just like approaching it in the sense of coming at it with like a curious and open mind is always really important.
Yeah, I think so too. And knowing that you don't have to be the same as the person that you know who introduced you to a different type. You can, you're free to go do whatever you need to do for your own self, right? Because all
Yes.
bodies are different. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the conscious connected circular breathing,
Mm-hmm.
there's no retentions in there, which is holding your breath, right? That's the inhale and hold.
Mm-hmm.
And so what was it about that you really connected with? Because you went all the way to Costa Rica to get trained in this, which sounds like a really fun time.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
It was great. So it's interesting because I think it depends on the facilitator and just like what intuitively you're picking up on for what you want to offer for the class. So
Right.
Ashley Ludman, my teacher,
Yeah.
she would sometimes incorporate retentions kind of, I would say, in like the third quarter of the class. And so it's like your body at that point is very like hyper oxygenated and like, you're going, you're going, you're going. So then once you actually do that retention, it's so easy to hold your breath because your body already has so much oxygen
Okay.
in it. And so then you are actually allowed and like able to fall into those deeper states. So sometimes I do offer retentions in classes.
Okay.
It's kind of like I'll feel out the energy and be like, okay, maybe we'll do some retentions today. Kind of what's going on in the collective. I'll be like, what's happening today? Can people,
Yes.
feel this?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I just find with the circular breathing, it does just allow you, for me personally, it might be different for other people, but it does really allow you to kind of reach those states. I would of like almost bliss. It's like you're just you're able to just like really tune in to the power of your breath. And like I give those auditory cues in class of just like reclamation, tuning into your inner power, your inner strength, and just giving people again that permission piece to explore that, like just through breathing simply,
Right.
and in connection with anxiety and depression, it really, I find, helps move so much of that energy and that tightness. And kind of coming back to that question that you asked earlier in the sense of how can it help physically heal the body,
Right.
with anxiety and depression, it's such a heavy feeling in the body physically, and a lot of tightness and a lot of, um contraction, I would say.
Yes.
And so when you are breathing, you're able to physically and energetically, I find, move that space. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And from the very first moment that we take a breath as a baby, we are in a pattern of breathing. And sometimes, if you don't take a breath deep enough as a baby, you set up patterns of shallow breathing.
Mhm.
And over time, we can get very disconnected from our breath. It's something we don't typically think about, other than, I'm breathing too hard right now, or I can't get enough air in, or something's happening, right? Unless it's in that moment where something big's going on.
Mhm.
So, we get disconnected from our breath. What are your thoughts on that, on the whole disconnection thing? And
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead. No, just what are your thoughts on the disconnection?
Yeah, I think it's just really in the sense of living in a society that is, again, just so fast paced and that has been conditioned and programmed for us to not really connect deeply with ourselves, but maybe to connect in the sense with others.
Right.
And so I find, yeah, it's a deep like programming and conditioning, because it is so important to connect with yourself, because every time you connect with yourself and you connect with your breath, you're connecting with the present moment. And so when you're not connecting with your breath, you're either living in the past or you're living in the future. And so every time, like for those who are listening, if you just take a deep breath right now, you're literally like, oh wow, I'm back here,
Yeah, here I am.
Yeah. And so it's such a great tool to just simply use, especially for people who do struggle with anxiety. It's such a great way to just connect back with the present moment. And again, reassuring yourself that you're safe, you're in this body, you're in control. Control is a really big piece that I work with breath work, of reminding people, you know, because it's interwoven with that safety piece.
Yes.
You don't feel like you're in control, you're not going to feel safe.
Right.
And so reminding people that they're in control and that they're safe is so important.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So let's talk about patterns then, breathing patterns. So there's different patterns for different things, obviously, because of the sympathetic and parasympathetic way of breathing. And, you know, I'm energizing myself when I shouldn't be instead of relaxing myself. And I know that I use breath work with my clients as well for anxiety, just teaching them some basic 4-7-8 breaths or alternate nostril breathing, that sort of thing, just as a tool that they can have to help with anxiety in the moment. And so what would be some several patterns that you could talk about that people could start with just to get into a state of relaxation? Because I think that's what we need most of in this world right now is being able to shut the stress off, because with everything going on in the world, it's ramping up and we're all absorbing it. So what would be a couple of good patterns for folks that they could take away from this podcast and just try on their own?
Yeah, so there's a couple. So there is box breathing. Have you heard of that one before?
Yes, I have.
Yeah,
Yes.
so there's box breathing, and it's really awesome to hear that you did the 4-7 breath, because that one I find is super powerful. Maybe I'll take the time to explain both, if that's okay.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd love it.
Yeah, so we can maybe even do a little practice right now. So for people
that would be fun.
listening, box breathing is really great if you're someone who struggles with anxiety, and you can just take, you know, a couple minutes to do this, whether you're on a walk or you're, you know, driving, and, you know, anytime. It really just takes a couple minutes. And so if you visualize a box, and usually you start out with the number 4. So visualizing that box, you'll inhale for 4, and then you hold for 4, and then you exhale for 4, and then you hold for 4 again. So it's visualizing those 4 lines as you're doing the breathing. And so we can kind of practice it now if you want to do.
Sure. And what does that do for you? Like what will you get from a box, doing some box breathing?
So the box breathing, it's definitely very relaxing. And again, it takes your mind away from what is causing you anxiety. So it's bringing that focus back into your breath and into a more calmer state. And so, and again, it just really helps your nervous system. And I'll encourage people to do this with breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. If you're someone who struggles with allergies, for example, it's okay that you have to breathe in and out through your mouth. That's all right. But yeah. And anytime you are struggling with anxiety, just doing a few breaths of breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth, you're stimulating your parasympathetic nervous system right away when you do that kind of breathing. So yeah.
So it's important then, just I've always had this question, it's important then to be how does it work with the breath in and then out through the mouth? Is that an important thing, not to be breathing from the same channel, as so to speak? So what does that do in the body? I'm always the scientific side of things. I like to understand. So
that's great.
What does it do? What does it do in the body when you go in through the nose and out through the mouth? Is it the vagus nerve? Is that what's happening?
I believe it's working with the vagus nerve.
Okay.
I'm definitely not as educated as I'd like to be in the scientific realm of breathwork.
Okay.
I feel like I've
Me
more
either.
spiritual realm of it.
Yeah. Okay.
I believe it's tuning into the vagus nerve and to the parasympathetic nervous system. So when you're breathing in and out through your mouth, so kind of like if you've seen people go into a panic attack, they'll
right, shallow breath.
They're breathing in and out through their mouth super fast and super shallow breathing. And so I've been very grateful for being able to be present for anyone who has been having a panic attack, to just be like, hey, like, let's just close our eyes and just do some really deep, super slow breathing, and just give yourself permission to just listen to my voice. And we're just going to focus on breathing until this passes. That's all we're going to do. Right. You know? And so a big part of that is just being kind of that anchor for that person and remaining calm.
Okay.
And I was really able to step into this when I was doing my breathwork training. I assisted on my first class with Ashley, and this big, like 6'2" European man was having a severe emotional release, and he was convulsing on the floor and crying and being very vocal. And Ashley waved me over and she was like, "Hey, I need you to physically support this man. Can you do that?" And I was like, yeah, I can do that. And so I had to kind of sit beside him, and we had to sit him upright. And I had to use my leg as a support for his back, and then my arms as a support for his back and his chest. And so to be able to have that man just like completely surrender and welcome that in was so powerful. And yeah, it was like just being able to hold a grown man and witness a grown man have such a powerful release just through the power of breathing. I was like, this is such deep medicine, you know. And then after the class, he was talking to Ashley, and I came up, and he was like, "Were you the one supporting me?" And I was like, yes, I was. And he was like, "You're so tiny." Like, I know. And he's like,
there's
"Thank you
strength
so much."
in smallness.
Yeah, tiny but mighty. But
That's right.
he was just like, "Wow, thank you so much. You know, can I give you a hug?" And I was like, "Of course." And so yeah, it's just, you know, yes, breathwork is that piece of, you know, connecting back to yourself, but it's like I believe that we're one consciousness, we're universal consciousness, you know. And so it's like your healing is my healing and my healing is your healing. My partner taught that one to me, and I think it's so beautiful. It really,
and so I bet you noticed too when he was finished and had let all that go, I bet you he even looked different, because I find that with my clients. We'll do this wonderful hypnotherapy session. We'll just let go of so much stuff. We'll get rid of all the blocks and everything. And then when they, or even with, especially with the trauma work that I do, we'll work through all the trauma release work, and they look completely different when they're done. It's like, wow, you even look different. And
it's like a different color. They're like,
totally
lighter. It's just like, of course we're made out of energy. Like, no kidding.
Yes, we are. Of course, yes. Okay, so I'm going to come back to the 4 breath. So the 4 breath, and we're just going to do a little practice of that just so we get that in there. So if you want to lead us on the box breath, that'd be great.
Yeah. So if you're not driving, close your eyes, and we'll practice the 4-4-4 box breathing. And so visualizing a box in front of you with those 4 lines. We're going to inhale to the count of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and holding that, pausing for 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. And exhale now. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then pausing again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to inhale now. 1, 2, 3, 4, and pausing again for the count of 4. And then exhaling for 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and pausing again. And then we're going to do one last round, inhaling for 4, inhaling through your nose, 1, 2, 3, 4, and pausing. And exhaling for 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and just holding for those last 4 seconds. Good. And then taking a nice deep breath in through your nose and exhaling through your mouth.
That was lovely. I almost went somewhere in that 4 seconds. The interesting thing about the box breath is that it feels very almost uncomfortable when you exhale and let all the air out, and then you stop and you hold. That's the part that's a little bit uncomfortable, isn't it? Because we're used to just taking that next breath in. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Totally. Yeah, and you can incrementally go up with the numbers. Like people go like 5 and 5, 6 and 6. So it kind of just depends on where you're at with your practice and what feels good for you, and just intuitively listening to that.
And you're building your lung capacity as you do this breath work too. So you're actually going to be more physically able to do things right?
For
So you're
sure.
actually helping yourself physically when you're doing the breath work, because you are doing that, right?
Yeah,
So you
physically,
climb more
mentally,
stairs, it'll
emotionally.
be good.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. A lot of people say to me who have been like returning clients to the group sessions or private
Right.
one-to-ones, they actually say that they're less reactive.
Ah,
So with doing
yes.
breath work, they're like less reactive, much more calm,
Mhm.
and they're just saying that it's really positive for their overall health and overall well-being in their life, which is
Yeah, it
so
just feels
beautiful and
so
so
good.
reassuring to me.
And the best part is it's free. Breathing is free, right?
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
I'm a sound healer too. So sound, like, and you start your classes, I was going to ask you this question. You start your classes with a toning exercise or a tapping exercise. I really love the toning because I'm a sound healer, and I teach people how to do that for themselves, to just move themselves, but you're doing breath work at the same time when you're toning,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So isn't it interesting that the two really big healers that we have, we can do ourselves, are free to our own, in our own bodies, right? Your voice is a giant sound tool, and your lungs, your breath, is the other one. Haven't
Mhm.
figured out if there's any more, but I'm sure there are, but those are the two biggies, right?
For
So they
sure.
are free. You don't have to get any equipment. You can do it anywhere.
Mhm.
Taking a class is a really good thing to understand and learn and be supported if you're going through things to bring up. But um, yeah, it's really awesome.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
you do tapping or toning when you start. So can you explain why you do that as sort of a getting ready for breathwork exercise?
Yeah, it's kind of like a nice little warm up I like to do. Just in the sense of like dropping into the body. Tapping is
Mhm.
really good again for the nervous system, for anxiety, and just to bring that awareness piece into the body and out of the mind, I would
Yes.
say, because
Okay. That's the biggest thing, isn't it?
yeah, exactly, exactly. It's like I'll give those auditory cues of, don't worry about what you have to do later or what you have to do tomorrow. Just allow yourself to be completely here in the present moment. And it's also bringing like a curiosity piece in the sense of like, oh, do I feel a tightness here? Can I bring awareness into this space? And toning, for example, I find is such a powerful tool because
Mm-hmm.
especially for women, it's like we've been quieted for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you're, whatever gender you are, it really gives you that again permission piece to sound and to vocalize, because I think it works with a lot of shame and guilt that people have with making sound or taking up too much space. And I personally find it so calming. So I'm like, okay, if this really works for me, I'm going to see if it works for other people.
Yeah.
And it's been a really beneficial tool for me. I remember moving into the island or onto the island, sorry, and having to go to certain breathwork sessions or to ecstatic dance, and everyone's going breathing in and and I was
Yeah.
just like, oh, where am I? And when I was in Bali, that was kind of a similar piece. But it's like, oh, okay, what's coming up right now, and how can I get curious with that rather than judging myself, and lean into that piece and see how I feel, actually expressing myself and sounding it out and sighing it out, because it's such a powerful tool to move
It is.
energy. And like you said, coming back to that free piece, it's like you can do it anytime in your own home.
Right.
So
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just make sure that there are people, if people are around, that you're not, scaring them. But
Totally,
it's good to
totally.
be able to make the noises. And I think humming and singing and doing all of those things is a way to move energy. And it
Mm-hmm.
feels really good. And I know that when I do the toning and when I'm teaching that and stuff, I have this class stop and just feel their body. And you can feel you're vibrating, you're lifting your frequency,
Yeah.
which is what you want, taking yourself out of the lower levels, right? So you're allowing yourself to lift, which is a really
Mm-hmm.
cool thing. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you can do it anywhere. Same with the breath work, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Now you were going to explain the 4-7-8 breath because I didn't. So could you do that for us so that folks have another tool of 4-7-8 breath?
Yeah, of course. So the 478 breath, we'll just kind of do an example again. So if you're not driving, don't close your eyes.
Thank
But
you.
you can just close your eyes, and we'll just kind of take a nice deep breath here, just regularly breathing in through our nose and exhaling through the mouth. And so the way that the 4-7-8 breath works is that you're going to be inhaling for 4, pausing for 7, and exhaling for 8 seconds. And so we'll try that again. So just let an exhale out right now. And then on your next breath, breathe in for Om 1, Om 2, Om 3, Om 4. And we're going to pause for 7 seconds. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then exhaling for 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And inhale deeply with your nose for 4, 3, 2, 1. And pause for 7, 4, 5, 6, 7. And exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we'll do one more round, inhaling deeply for 4, 3, 2, 1. And pausing for 7, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhaling deeply, pushing all of that air out of your lungs. 3, 2, 1. And then just taking a nice deep breath in through your nose and sighing it out, exhaling.
And thank you very much. That was lovely. And that's a really nice one for relaxation, getting yourself into the body.
Yeah.
And so you can actually do this one before you go to bed, right? Because you're
Mhm.
activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So if you are in monkey mind, which a lot of us are when we're trying to fall asleep, or if you wake up in the middle of the night with your brain churning, you can just get yourself into that 4-7-8 space to activate that parasympathetic nervous system and hopefully get yourself back to sleep, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Unless you have a better tool, unless you have a better one for sleep.
No, honestly, that those two are really great. I find for like before bed. Sometimes I'm very lucky I don't have too much trouble sleeping, but sometimes when I do, I'll just put on like a YouTube of the box breathing, and that really helps me. So
That's
yeah.
great. So are there different exercises for physical, emotional, and spiritual work using breath work? Is there different ways to access those areas of your life, your body, your self, using different exercises? Or is it just sort of a composite where you do your breath work and it may be helping your physical, your emotions may come up, and then how do you get yourself to the spiritual aspect of it? How do you get yourself there?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think what
Yeah.
comes up for me is kind of like they're all one, the way I
Okay,
see
so it
it.
is a composite.
And
Yeah,
so,
okay.
yeah, I would say it's probably a composite in the sense
Yeah.
of like, the spiritual aspect will come naturally. It's kind of like one woman that I'm working with right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, you're so intuitive. You're so tapped in. She's having all these visions come in, and she's never really kind of experienced or to like really tapped into this world. She used to tap into it, but kind of um hasn't tapped into it for a while. And so, hearing her have these shares, I'm like, you're super tapped in. And so it's just kind of like that's why it's so important to have these sharing spaces after, whether it's a private or a one-to-one, to
Right.
really let people be seen in their process.
Mhm.
But yeah, I would definitely say it's a composite for sure. I would say for the physical aspect, one example that I would use, I used to have sports induced asthma.
Oh, okay.
I didn't really like taking my inhaler because I didn't want to get teased being younger. But
Yes.
I used my breathing to help heal my sports induced asthma. There was something intuitively inside me that I was like, I think I can get over this just through breathing really calmly. And so I would, anytime I started to feel myself having an asthma attack, I would stop running, and then I would just slow my breathing down and start breathing in through my nose and out through my mouth really, really slowly.
So
And
you
so
were
then
you were doing it intuitively.
yeah,
Isn't that
one of my
interesting?
friends, yeah, one of my friends who is an intuit, she was
Yeah.
like, this is not the first time you've taught this. And I was
Yes,
just like,
I'm sure. Yes, we find our way back, right? We
yeah.
find our way back to what is important to us as a spirit, which is
Mm-hmm.
great.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Um, I have a question for you. What if you I have two more questions if that's all right.
Sure.
If someone was about to start, what would you suggest they start with? If someone just wanted to see the effects of it or see if they could feel better every day, what would you suggest someone brand new to this could do to start a little breathwork practice for themselves at home?
Yeah, I would probably either say, like, I really love alternate nostril breathing. That's a really
Okay, yeah,
good
that's a good one.
practice. I would probably check in with them and see if there's someone who struggles with anxiety or any kind of
Mhm,
mental health, and
mhm.
I would kind of do a reading on that. So if they have more time in the evening, or more time in the morning, that would also be another question that
Right,
I would
okay.
ask. But probably like the 4-7-8 breath I find is super helpful. Um,
Mhm.
if there's someone who wants to be kind of more like stimulated and more like excited after, I would probably say the Wim Hof, because Wim Hof is super, super energizing, and I always feel so great after.
Okay, so
So
Wim Hof though is, I just read up on it because I haven't done Wim Hof breathing, but
mm,
it's like almost hyperventilating is
in a
how
sense,
it's how it says you're flooding yourself and then holding, right?
yeah. So I don't know if I would like, I'm sure some people would say it's hyperventilating,
Yeah, that's
but
kind of a scary word.
it's circular breathing. That's how I would
Okay.
say it, because
Okay.
it's similar to the breath work that I offer.
Hmm.
But you're just connecting that inhale and exhale. So the difference between hyperventilating is that you're not quite in control when you're hyperventilating, but when
Okay.
you're conscious connected circular breathing, you're very conscious and you're very
Okay.
aware
Very
of that
control,
inhale
which is
and
a
exhale.
very nice way to do it, right?
And
Yeah,
so
but
it's again just that control piece, right? Of like,
right.
okay, I am in control of my breath and I am safe. And if it feels like too much for me, I can stop, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
But yeah, the Wim Hof is very stimulating, and I always find it really great to wake up and do first thing. I do practice
Okay.
cold therapy, so that's also another reason why I love
Oh,
it.
good for you.
So,
Yeah. 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 Okay. Yeah. Because I know the Wim Hof is you're breathing fast. It's faster breathing, right?
yeah,
Which is
and it's
kind of like the
usually
Kundalini, the yoga
mhm,
breath that I was doing, where you're sort of puffing a little bit. So,
totally, totally.
yeah. Okay. So that makes sense.
Mhm,
All
mhm,
right. So they can explore Wim Hof if they want to have that stimulation that
mhm,
to be energized. So depending on the
mhm,
type of day, that's great advice. And then
mhm.
478 is always a good one to start with too, right?
Yeah, 4-7-8 is like, I definitely would say is much more calming and
Okay.
grounding. Whereas the Wim Hof, I say it's like my cup of coffee in the morning,
Okay.
because it's just like doing that and then taking a cold plunge, all the dopamine's releasing, right? So you feel
Wow.
so good after, and you feel so alive. And I think that's why a big part of his work is with cold therapy, because
Right.
you feel so alive after, and
Right.
you're just like, I'm unstoppable. The rest of my day is great. I can't wait.
Wow. Do you cold plunge every day?
I wish, some people might
Yeah.
be like on a podcast and be like, yeah, I cold plunge every day. No, I definitely don't do it every day. I would say a couple times a week.
Yeah, but
Um,
you would love to do it every day, right? Yeah.
totally, totally. Yeah, yeah. I'll get there one day,
Oh,
but a
good
couple
for
times a
you.
week.
Yeah, I see all these people running down to the ocean and going in, and I think, I'm going to wrap myself in my coat and just watch them from the sidelines. It's just
Yeah,
not what I'm drawn to, but that's
yeah,
okay.
totally, exactly,
We're all
exactly.
different, right? And so,
Mhm.
if you could take it down to one thing what would be the superpower of breath work? What would you say the superpower of breath work is for folks?
Superpower of breath work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really realizing the power within you. It's
Okay.
really understanding that all of the knowledge lays within you.
Right. That's
That's what
beautiful.
I would say.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Okay. And for
it's
people
like a
who
big
aren't,
remembering piece.
yeah, for
hmm
people who aren't visual, because you said people can get visions and stuff. So what happens if you're not visual?
Yeah, I would say it's more so kind of like a physical feeling. Sometimes people have
Okay.
auditory or will have sensory in the sense of like smells.
Right.
Um, I had one person who started to smell roses. And
Wow.
I was just like, whoa, that's so great. And it actually ended up being connected to a loved one who had passed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's so beautiful. So everyone is different, but it's perfect in their own individual way. And just because one person's having visions doesn't mean that, your experience is less than the other.
Right.
Kind of like I was saying earlier, in the sense of if you don't have that big, kind of emotional,
Yeah, that
it doesn't
huge
mean that
experience.
you didn't have a good or positive experience. You might actually have a really great sleep later,
Yeah.
and that's really what your nervous system and your body needed.
Right. Okay. And so for the people out there that aren't visual, because I'm not, I
Mm-hmm.
actually did a rebirthing breathwork session. It was about 45 minutes of this intense pattern, rebirthing, it's called, I think. I don't know.
I've heard of that one. Yep.
Anyways, all of a sudden, whammo, when we stopped and you float in that place of stopping, which is a really
Yeah.
nice place,
Mm-hmm.
my third eye just opened wide up. I had the most incredible visual experience, and I've just been craving that ever since. It's like, wow, I've
Mm-hmm.
got to get back to that because now I know I can have
Mm-hmm.
visual experiences, and that breath work really helped me get there,
Yeah.
which is
Yes.
awesome. So yeah,
Yeah. It's such a powerful tool.
it
Like
is.
it's honestly so beautiful. And I think it's just like witnessing people's process in sessions. It's like what fuels me. It's what gives me purpose. So
Yeah,
yeah.
great. And
Hmm.
you're really good at it.
Oh,
You're
thank
really good at it. It's just so, you're so good at it. And
you.
so how can people reach you? Do you do online breathwork classes? You do in person in our town here in
Mhm.
Victoria? How can people reach you and find
Yeah.
out how you're doing your onlines or your in-person stuff?
So the website is in the works right now, but
Okay,
the
but it's
best way
coming.
the best way to reach me would probably be through my social media, so my Instagram, which
Okay.
is Breathe with Catherine Cheong. I know it's a long handle, but
Yeah.
maybe Nikki will have it in the show
We'll put
notes.
it in the show notes. Yeah.
Yeah, so that would definitely be the best way to reach
Okay.
me. And yeah, I do online offerings too, because I'm originally from just outside of Toronto, so a lot of my friends and family still really like connecting that way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, a lot of
mhm.
people like online because we got used to it during the pandemic, and it's a great way to be able to reach a wider audience, right?
Mhm.
Because, yeah,
Mhm.
which is lovely.
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And sometimes people too, like going out and being vulnerable is easier to be vulnerable in your own safety of your home.
Yes. Yes.
So it can be a good introduction to
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah, I find that I do online hypnosis sessions as well, and I find people like it because they're comfortable in their own space,
Yeah, yeah,
right? It's a lot
totally.
easier for them because they're comfortable, which is lovely. So, but you do
Mm-hmm.
one-on-ones online too, right? So
Yeah,
one-on-one sessions with people. Okay,
yeah, I
great.
do private one-on-ones, private groups online, and both in person,
Okay.
private.
And what are some of the things we know anxiety and depression, but what are some of the things you might do for an individual one-on-one session? Like, what are some of the things people come to you for just at a high
Mhm.
level?
A lot
Just so
of
people get
people
a
come
sense.
to me
Mhm.
with unprocessed grief. That has
Okay.
been a very big
So
piece
grief
that
is a big
I've
one
been
for
working.
you.
Yeah, grief has been a
Okay.
really big one for me. It can just be like childhood trauma, repressed and suppressed anger has been a really popular one. And
Yeah.
yeah, what
Good
I
though.
do,
People need to get that out of them because they're going to get sick, right?
well, of course, it manifests, as we know,
Yeah,
in physical ailments. And
absolutely.
um, yeah, so a lot of the individuals who I work with who do have that anger piece, I'll usually say, hey, so bring a pillow, or I have a pillow here if you want to vocalize into it, or like hitting it. It's
Huh.
so important to, again, that permission piece. You'll hear me say it so many
Yes,
times, but
but
it's
it's a
just
really
like,
important part.
yeah, yeah, because we just, we're conditioned in a society to not be angry, don't cry,
Right. Don't show
be a
your
good
emotions.
girl, especially with women,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
And so the pillow just allows those people to move that energy. It's important that that energy gets moved out of the body.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. That's a really
100%.
big part of release. So,
Mhm, mhm.
well, it's been so wonderful chatting with you today, Catherine. Is there anything that you would like to just say to the folks who are listening about breath work? Is there any final thoughts you might have before we close off here?
Yeah, I think just in the sense, if you're curious about breath work and you've never done it,
Mhm.
do your research. It's important to try out different facilitators. If you have not a positive experience with one facilitator, it doesn't mean that breath work isn't for you, because everyone holds space differently.
You're right.
And really listen to your intuition and your own inner voice with what feels good for you and what is true to you. Because yeah, it's like I said earlier, it's about remembering that inner strength and that inner power and that inner knowledge that is within you and that's within all of us, and just remembering that.
Yeah,
So
that's great. Thank you. It's wonderful, wonderful advice. So I want to thank you so much for coming on today.
yeah, thanks so much for
And
having me.
yeah, it's been great having this lovely conversation. I've learned a lot about breath work, and I'm going to go out and research a little more and maybe try some energizing breath work in the morning and see if I can let go of coffee. We'll see. Yeah.
Totally.
And so if folks out there, if you want to reach me to work with me doing hypnotherapy or energy work or trauma release, you can get me at www.elementalbalance.ca. And I just wanted to let folks know too that my book, Radical Self-Love, Live a Vibrant Life Beyond Fear and Limitation, will be coming out as an Audible book in the next couple of weeks. That's my big project right now. So I'm super excited about that. And you can find information about the book and how to order it through Amazon, etc., on my website. Wonderful. So I want to thank our listeners too for taking the time to learn about breath work and find a new way, another way to improve their lives. And I really, really hope that you will practice, whether it's the box breath or the 4-7-8 or going out and finding your own way. I just wish you all lots and lots of healing and love. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next month.